Hello and welcome. This is the first in a series of 3 videos where we're going to teach you how to make this movie review app using Pagedraw and React. This is a very simple single page app that lets you uh, choose a rating for a movie that you like, lets you add comments, and if you click on a movie, it changes to a different one. Okay, so let's dive right in. You want to start by just going to the Pagedraw dashboard and creating a new drawing. I'm going to call mine movies. And here we're in the Pagedraw editor. Really cool. This is where most of the magic's going to happen. So the most important probably at first button that you should learn about is this add button in the top left hand corner. It lets you just add blocks to your document. So you can add artboard stacks, rectangle, and a bunch of other blocks. So let's start by adding an artboard block, and later you can just use the hotkey A or R or T for the different types of blocks. So A for artboard. For each artboard, essentially corresponds in your React project to a React component. Each artboard is going to be the render function of one React component. Okay, so let's draw this one. We can change its fill color to be something like grayish, and hit R and drag to make a new rectangle block, and I'm gonna make its fill color be something like white. Okay, and I want to add some border to it as well. There we go. Cool. Now I'm gonna copy paste this Pulp Fiction picture. You can copy paste any PNG from the internet, from wherever you want, straight into Pagedraw, resize it, and I'm gonna put it right here. So I'm gonna make this artboard a little bit larger, put this in the center, and make some space here up top. For a title, again, now you hit T for text, and I'm adding some text block. I want to make the font size there a little bit bigger. Let's say 20, and make this also larger, and I'll make it a line in the center. Okay, it's important to make this larger here because if we want dynamic content to come in later, the text is going to wrap basically following the layout given by the text block around it. Cool. So, and I'm going to change this to Pulp Fiction. Awesome. So now this UI is pretty much ready. You can get the code for it by hitting export, and we get the JSX code here and the CSS. But we don't want to keep copy pasting from these files all the time. So what you actually want to do is to install the Pagedraw command line interface, which you can install by just doing this one single line here, copy pasting it into your terminal. Okay. I'm not going to do this right now because I already have it installed. What this is actually going to do is it's going to install a couple more things. It's going to install create React app and create a new React app called demo for you, and also ask you to log in to the Pagedraw command line. So since I already have it and I already have this boilerplate app called demo, I'm just going to cd into it, and at the end of this script, if you follow exactly this installation, is going to have also a pagedraw.json file here, which tells essentially the Pagedraw CLI which app to fetch from. Okay, so now I can run Pagedraw login to make sure I'm logged in. It's going to ask me to log in with Google here, and this is essentially going to store a token inside of my file system. Now it says authentication successful, so it knows that I have access to this project. Now after that, I can just run Pagedraw sync. What this is going to do is going to start syncing docs from my app. These are the default paths. You can change them in the editor anytime you want. At source Pagedraw artboard.jsx. Very cool. So now in a different tab, I'm going to require those files generated by Pagedraw. Let's just go into source, and I'm going to copy this tutorial 0 file here to be my new index.js. And I'll show you what it has. So index.js is a very simple, this is essentially a single file in my whole application right now, a single JavaScript file, except for the Pagedraw generated ones. So this is just this very simple React app called app. It has just a render function that returns app render interesting part is that AppRender is coming from Pagedraw generated code. It lives inside the folder Pagedraw and the file name Artboard. Okay, and then this is just rendering that. Cool. Very straightforward. I'm going to now use npm start to run on my Webpack server. And we're off. Cool. So this is a React app, and you already notice a couple of things are wrong with it, right? So first of all, the background didn't extend to the full size of the window. Okay, that's going to be because this artboard essentially, remember I told you that all artboards are essentially components in React. So we have no way of distinguishing without you telling us if an artboard is supposed to be a top level page or a component, a smaller component. So here you have to check is page. And if you do that, this is going to, again, live compile and already be synced here, and you see gray in a whole page. The second part is that this is not centered and is not responsive to the screen size. You see, it doesn't change at all when I change the screen size. By default in Pagedraw, we don't do any constraints, so we just like make everything fixed essentially. So what I'll do here is I have to specify, and you go on the sidebar, what we call these constraints, and you see you can say what should be flexible. That is, what should grow when the parent, in this case, the page itself, grows. Okay, so I want to say here that this one has flexible left margin and right margin. So this is going to make this margin and that margin flexible. So my little block here stays in the center. And let's refresh one more time. There we go. Now it's centered because of both the margins are flexible. Cool. I also made this a little bit too small. Let me increase the size pretty quickly here. And you can use this button here to center things. Again, oh, now you see that this is not centered again, is because the flexible stuff is proportional to the actual size you see in the editor. So you see that this is larger than this. It's also going to be larger in here. So if you want it a bit centered, you have to make it actually centered. There we go. Very cool. Nice. Now let's make the first feature, the first dynamic feature, I'd say, which is we want these two to change when we click on the image. Okay. So this is going to be two parts. First, we're going to have to make both of these dynamic. So to make something dynamic, you click, you hover over the sidebar here, and you see this little button that says Make Dynamic in the text content. You could do this for font size, kerning, text color, a bunch of other properties, but we're going to do it for content right now. And you click here for the image block. We're going to also make the image dynamic. Very cool. Now you see that in the React app, it failed to compile because the image has a source that's empty. Because, of course, we made it dynamic, but never said which variable this should be coming from. Okay, so let's do that. Now, if we head over to the code sidebar, we should have two red text inputs, just saying that like there are two variables that were made dynamic but are not assigned yet, or we haven't said what their names are. So let's say that this one is this.props.imageSource, and this one is this.props.title. Okay. So now these are defined, but they don't exist yet in our calling code. Let's change that. I am going to change this into my tutorial1 file, which is a little bit larger. It has a constructor that has a state, which is the title and image source. And it returns AppRender, which is the same thing as before, but it passes props to it. This is essentially passing props to the Pagedraw generated code. Title equals this.state.title, image source equals this.state.image source, and there's this change movie, which is we're going to soon use, so we'll talk about that in a bit. It won't interfere with what we have right now. So if we go to our React app right now, you should see, great, Pulp Fiction right here. And if I change the title Pulp Fiction to movie Pulp Fiction, you should immediately see it refresh here. Cool. we have our first usage of dynamic data. Now we just need to add this handler. I already have my handler implemented, so it's essentially an event handler is going to change the movie whenever you click on the Pulp Fiction cover image. So we already have this change movie implemented for us. This just sets states to title Back to the Future. That's another of my favorite movies, and with its image source, which is different. And again, pass this change movie as props. This is change movie.bind this. You have to be careful with the bind here, but just like in regular React code. The reason we're doing this is because we want to access this change movie handler inside of Pagedraw again. So we go here, click on our Pulp Fiction block. We go back to the draw sidebar, and at the very end of the draw sidebar, there's a little event handler section. I click on plus, and I get a new event handler. I just do on click, and it was this .props.change movie was the name of it, right? So now if we go back to our app and I click on the Pulp Fiction movie, I need to refresh this, I believe. It becomes Back to the Future. Amazing. So that's what it's doing. This is the end of the first video. I'll see you in the next one where we're going to implement multi-state blocks for these little stars over here. Awesome.